actually work sort of part-time in a local quarry for Tarmac Roadstone. I worked on their switchboard, their telephone switchboard, and I also did a little bit of surveying for them. But no, really, I suppose you can say that I've gone straight from school to college and back to school again.
Yeah. What kind of advance have you seen being a teacher in the metalwork line?
Well, until, 3 or 4 years ago, basically nothing really changed. I was more or less a full-time metalwork teacher, teaching up to A level at some stage. And then, as I say, 2 or 3 years ago, everything changed because we went more into the design side of craft. So we were asking pupils to actually go through the design process, work on an idea, develop it through, draw it up, and then make it. But they didn't have to just work in metal. They could work in metal, wood, and acrylic.
So it could be that combination of wood and metal.
That's right. So now when we teach craft or CDT, we actually allow the pupils to go between the woodwork and the metal workshop. Some may choose wood as a complete material for their answer to their design. Some may choose metal. Some may choose a lot of wood and a little bit of metal, or the other way around, or a bit of plastic. It depends. We give them complete freedom.
Can you tell me a bit about the plastic side of things?
The plastic side of things. Yeah, that's... When I first started teaching, plastics really in those days meant fiberglass. We used to use fiberglass to make boat hulls, tea trays, anything we could think of along those lines. But it was very messy, and there was a little bit of a health hazard to it. And now recently we tend to use acrylic, or the trade name is Perspex more and more. We can actually heat it and bend it. We can actually, what we call vacuum form it, that is make a wooden mould and draw the hot plastic over the mould to form trays and containers and things like that. It's a very simple material to work in. Once you've learned the basic techniques and you've actually handled the stuff and know its capabilities, you can do a lot with it. Plus it's very cheap.
There's been a lot of metalwork machinery down at lower school in the last 2 years, and
Yes.
has this helped with the plastic teaching, would you say?
Not necessarily. In fact, what's happening at lower school and to some degree at upper school is that the machines are not being used as often as they were. For example, the lathes are only used a fraction of the time, 1/10 of the time that they were used 3 or 4 years ago. The milling machine is virtually never used. Shaping machine we could do with getting rid of to make more space for other equipment for plastics. But the plastics equipment, the strip heaters and the vacuum former, quite honestly, I used chip the item. Where it's chipped off, tarnishes, and the rest remains very clean.
You find it expensive to look after the maintenance, would you say?
No, it's more time than anything. For example, if you're going to make something out of steel, if you make a small bench vise out of steel, you've got to keep a coating of oil on it. Otherwise, it will rust. Other than that, paint what surfaces you can. Obviously, you can't paint sliding surfaces because the paint would restrict the sliding mechanism. But keep them well oiled, and it should be okay.
That was the interview. This is Mr. Moore, the maintenance man who worked at Buxton College. I'm going to ask him some questions. Why did you become a maintenance man?
Well, in actual fact, I'm semi-retired. I only work part-time. I've been employed in engineering all my life, and this was an opportunity to sort of work less hours in the sort of work I'm familiar with.
So you have worked in engineering
All my life,
previously.
yes.
What kind of maintenance do you do daily?
Well, there isn't a daily routine for maintenance because the job as technician in school the technician in this craft department doesn't only entail maintenance. Whilst I'm responsible for all the machinery in that it has to be kept in good working order, it isn't a regular daily job. There are many other things which form part of the job. So the maintenance aspect is spread out over perhaps a couple of hours on Monday afternoon on the metalwork machines. Might do the woodworking machines for lubrication and inspection any day when they're fairly free. But once a week they all have a good look at it, at least.
Would you say there's any special maintenance that needs to be sent off for any companies?
Well, in school workshops, general maintenance will be done by the technicians. Any major repairs on such as lathes, broken parts which mean that the machine has to be dismantled, then there's a separate department of the county council who come and do that work for us. So that wouldn't be required to dismantle any machines for repairs.
Would you say British tools are the best?
Well, if we're talking about hand tools, well-known names like Stanley and Record, the hand tools are extremely good, but there are some extremely good tools from Sweden as well. Sandvik, people like that. But if it's machine tools, then obviously a lot of continental firms, Jones in particular, are very good at this aspect as well.
Generally speaking, it's people.
Well, we would obviously buy British where it's we can get a suitable quality.
How do you maintain tools?
Do you mean hand tools or
Hand tools,
like?
say hammer.
Well, they're inspected for chips or anything like this. There is no maintenance really on hammers. Make sure the head's not loose, of course, on the shafts. If that's so, then they have to be a new shaft or re-wedged. Screwdrivers, things like that, will grind the tips as and when required to stop skidding on a screw.
Just basic.
General care, yeah. And anything we see as amiss, we tend to.
What about lathes? Would you say
Well, the lathe tools, the cutting tools, we're responsible for keeping them sharp and ground up to the correct shape. These are changed as and when the need arises. If someone comes and says that blade's not cutting very well, the tool's not cutting very well, we'll look at it and grind it if necessary.
maintenance difference? Would you say the difference between lower school and upper school?
No. No.
What about the plastics? Is this?
The plastics is getting to be quite widely used, but this is mainly lower school now. Since I don't get involved with the activities at lower school so much, I'm not so much employed on the plastic side.
So it's just general engineering.
Yes, the maintenance in a school workshop, of course, is totally different.
CPV in Buxton Boys School. Could you explain about your job?
Well, my job's very peculiar, Paul, at the moment, because I'm actually doing two jobs, as you appreciate this year. My job, in the main, is community tutor at Buxton College, and because that took me around a lot of other schools in the High Peak last year, doing some research, I came across a course which I like very much for students of your age, called a CPV course. And that enabled pupils, you're going to make me laugh in a minute, pupils to stay on after their fifth form and spend at least 9 months to 10 months looking at the world of work and deciding where they'd like to go. In other words, they didn't have to get out of school and find a job which they may not like, but they managed to get into school, stay in school past the sixth form, and do some study at the same time in conjunction with the High Peak. So I came into CPV by accident.